Welcome back to another episode of the Betterment Podcast, the pursuit of infinite growth. Thank you guys for jumping on today, whether you're listening on Spotify or YouTube. I appreciate it. I'm really excited for today's episode. So let's get into it, baby. Today's topic is going to be on influences, both subconscious and conscious, and how they shape our daily actions. A lot of the ideas we are going to be talking about today are going to be taken from the book, The Compound Effect, by Darren Hardy. Phenomenal book, highly recommend it. I'm rereading it, and a lot of these ideas about influence I got from this book. So if you haven't read the book, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, great book. Today's topic is based on last week's poll voting. So we have been doing some poll voting, which is pretty cool. Where a majority of the subscribers on Instagram voted on what they wanted to hear, which ended up being influences. So remember, you can vote as well on our Instagram at _Betterment Podcast. But without further ado, let's get into it. So everyone is affected by three kinds of influence. It talks about this a lot in the book. Inputs, what feeds your mind. Associations, the people you spend your time with. And the environment, your surroundings. So what we're going to be doing is, for this episode, we're going to be, breaking down each individual aspect of it, of influences, each one of these areas, and kind of go through some studies, explain how people fall into a lot of these influence traps, how to kind of rework it, and kind of pick and choose the influences that you actually want to be around and put some conscious light to it. Okay, let's get into it. So let's start with input. Most common type of influence exposure for sure is input, right? These are things that, once again, you allow to influence you. So things that you're consciously aware about. Things that you purposely seek to interact with, such as social media, texting, Netflix, right? So think about, people you reach out to on a day-to-day basis, shows you watch, things that you are purposely deciding that you want to interact with that sort of influence. It's important to understand that your brain is not built to make you happy. We all are very aware of that. It's evolved to keep you safe, right? Over thousands of years of evolution, right, the human species have survived because of survival mechanisms. So it's a lot of the reason why people in today's society are trying to look for happiness or maybe even short-term vices. And the reality is your brain is designed to, basically, it's coming from a primitive, very, very primitive beginnings, where it's programmed to keep you away from danger and negativity. That's why we have the fight or flight, right? It's ancestral, it's primitive, right? And so the reality is you can't change your DNA. It's the way we've been for thousands of years, humankind, but you can change your behaviors, right? And we're gonna be talking about that. How a person, right, and what I think is really important too is define words. So by defining words, right, you can detach the emotion, put the logic behind it, and it makes it more clear and concise as to what kind of things you're saying or thinking, right? If somebody says they have anxiety, well, that can mean a multitude of things. Define what anxiety is, and it sheds light. We're doing the same thing here with behaviors. So behaviors are how a person or group acts, or the way they conduct themselves. So think of reactions, activities, and patterns, right? That is behaviors. And we're gonna dive into that as we continue to go on. So you have to be conscious enough to know what we are letting into our mind daily, right? There's a crazy statistic that's been studied multiple times, and it's the fact that we only work with about 5% of our conscious mind. 95% of our mind is subconscious, right? Especially our subconscious thoughts, for that matter. People on average have between 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. So we're talking, let's make some simple math here. 6,000, 5% of 60,000 would be around 3,000 thoughts are new or conscious. Subconscious thoughts is 95% of what we think all day, every day. It's why people do the same patterns, drink out of the same cup of coffee, right? They go through the motions over and over again without even realizing they're doing it, because we're programmed that way. 95% of all of your thoughts that you think about on a day-to-day basis are from the day before, and they're subconscious programmings. And so they give a good analogy in the book, The Compound Effect, where they say, think of your mind as an empty glass. It holds anything you put into it. And I really like this analogy because if you think about a cup, right? The cup is designed to do what? designed to hold liquid, right? Your brain is designed to do what? Hold thoughts, hold information. What kind of thoughts or what kind of liquid in the cup you allow for it to hold is up to you. And so the reality is you are going to get dirty water and you have clean water, right? The whole idea, it's a nice clean cup, is you want to make sure, or you want to try to fill up as much of this cup with clean water, clean thoughts. However, no one's perfect. We live in a very noisy society. Dirty water, AKA negativity, drama, gossip, is going to get in here. And so it talks about it's inevitable that you're going to get dirty water with all the noise in today's society. However, what's not inevitable is the amount of dirty water you allow to filter into the glass, right? So limiting the amount of time you're spending on social media can limit the dirty water, right? The accounts you even follow. Are you following IG models or cat accounts or, whatever, propaganda for any political party, whatever it might be? Music or podcasts that you actively listen to. I really enjoy rap music, for example, but I think there's a time and a place for it in my day-to-day, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But the reality is everything you're thinking and hearing and seeing, especially social media and music, because it's something that I think majority of America is basically exposed to every day in large amounts, is subconsciously changing your thought processes. So remember, we want to take that 5% and aim it to shed light on the other 95% so that we can turn that 95% that isn't making us fulfilled and get a betterment, right? Get better from doing these changes. And so it kind of talks about this. It was a cool study that came up actually as well. And it estimated that about Americans spend around 2 hours and 24 minutes on social media a day. I think that's super underestimated. If I could give my own non-scientific analysis on that, I would say it's got to be closer to 4 or 5. But hey, let's call it 2.5 hours. That's over 800 hours a year on social media if you take it for about 2.5 hours. This is where it gets really crazy. If you average that out, what 800 hours is on a year, it comes out, I did the math on this, to 34 straight days of social media. So 1/12, over a month of your entire year is just spent on social media. And here's my thoughts on social media, just so we're clear. I literally use social media to promote this podcast. Social media can be phenomenal. It can be a way to network, to make money, to talk to family and friends that you can't see all the time. But the reality is most people, me included, because I'm still working on getting better, don't always use it for the beneficial purposes of what it's designed for. They use it to do mindless scrolling and to waste a bunch of time, which I'll get into in a second. So being aware of that is huge. Think about 1/12 of the month of your year is just spent on phone, which is crazy. Looking at social media. We're not even talking about texting, FaceTiming, watching Netflix. This is just social media related. And then this article, as I told you before, we're going to start bringing more stats into this podcast and articles that are fact-checked and backed. This is according to an article reported by exploringtopics.com, May 10th, 2024. So pretty recently. So what we kind of come to next is it can reduce the amount of distraction by setting up specific systems, right? One way that you can reduce the amount of the distraction that you have on a day-to-day basis from influence that you choose and inputs is setting up specific systems that are designed to mitigate that. So one example or one tip is don't check your social media the first or the last hour of the day. I've been doing this recently, I would say the last week or so, really trying to be mindful about it, and it's honestly nice. The reason why it's really important that you don't start your day checking social media or end your day checking social media is it's a well-studied fact that social media releases addictive chemicals in your brain, right, known as dopamine, which is the feel-good chemical. And so what happens is when every morning you're tired and you go ahead and grab your phone, you're getting fake short-term dopamine rushes to your brain, which subconsciously program it to be addictive to social media. You're fiending, right? You're fiending for the social media dopamine rush, right? I get it too. I'm not perfect, like I said. But the reality is if you can mitigate at least the first hour, you can start your brain without a lot of clutter, right? You can start your day with a more clear thought process and natural dopamine, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Second, you need to be aware of why or what you're looking up when you're on social media, like what you're looking at, what you're looking up. Andrew Huberman, who I cannot speak highly enough about that guy. Andrew Huberman's a phenomenal scientist, and he has his own podcast called Huberman Labs. You should definitely check it out. If you haven't heard of it, it's a life changer. But he talks about a lot of the time, many people, myself included as well, himself included as well, he admits, can fall victim to the mindless scrolling where there's no rhyme or reason for why you're even on social media. It kills time, right? How many times have we been there looking at our phone and 2 hours go by, or even 45 minutes, and we're like, shit, dude, I was just on here for 10 minutes. That's what I thought. But then time gets the best of us. It feeds addictions, right? The dopamine, right? The fake surges of dopamine, and can allow that dirty water to fill into your glass. So be mindful of what you're looking up there and what you're watching and following. Now, I love saying this, but I'll never stop saying it. I'm not a monk, right? I'm not a Buddhist. I also like social media. There's nothing wrong with spending time mindless scrolling in increments if you allot specialized time to do so. And so why I say that is because I think a lot of the time we go on social media because we're bored and we're just looking for something to distract us or give us some sort of feeling of positivity, aka the dopamine rush. And the reality is that really starts to destroy your subconscious and sets you up for a whole set of mental frames that are gonna feed addictions and ultimately cause you to be more distracted at quicker rates. Your focus and attention span shorten the more often you're on social media. And so these are just some things to think about. Now, the reason why I say that though is, hey, if you had a long day at work or you just did a nice gym session, you get home, you take a shower and you got 20 minutes, set a timer, jump on there and scroll away, have fun, live your life, right? You get one life, live it the way you want, but just keep in mind that obviously overexposure to social media can be detrimental to your mental health, physical health even as well. So something that actually one of my mentors taught me, shout out Christian Aluka at Ohm Solar, he's the CEO there with Cody Pitts. When I first started getting into the industry, one of the really key pieces of advice he gave me was switch out music for podcasts. So the whole idea is, audiobooks or webinars work as well, but the average American, this is another study by automotivefleet.com, drives 293 hours a year, okay? If you think about that, let's round up and call that 300 hours a year. You can literally turn your car into a classroom with just the amount of hours you spend listening to something informative or inspiring, right? Or academic. Now, once again, I get it. Not everybody wants to listen to podcasts all day, every day, me included. So what I say, or the way I frame it is this, right? You got to remember this too, guys. Everything in life is framing. If you can remember that, that's something that's really helped me in my life as I continue to grow and be better, is everything is framing in life. Everything is perspective. So the way I look at it is, look, if you can spend half of the time you're in your car spent on podcasts, that's 100, let's say it's 150 hours a year. That is literally the equivalent of taking a class or two at a semester of school. So if you frame it like that, like, hey, I'm getting a free education from all the podcasts and phenomenal access the internet has to actually thought-provoking information, right? It'll shift the way you think about putting on a podcast. My reality, the way I look at it is I don't usually like to listen to podcasts the first couple minutes, the days that I don't really feel like doing it. It's kind of like the days you don't feel like going to the gym. But after 5 or 10 minutes, every time, without fail, there's always something that I get from it, and it keeps me listening to whatever podcast I'm listening to. I think it goes to show as well, I should probably explain as well, I should say, is that think about the podcast you're listening to. I know we have a lot of people out there, especially girls, that like to call her daddy. Sure, for whatever floats your boat. We just talked about social media in increments. Do what pleases you. But when I'm referring to podcasts, I don't waste my time typically with that sort of stuff. I listen to entrepreneurial, finance, solar related investor podcasts that are shaping the way that I'm thinking. So whatever it is for you that you're trying to get better at, maybe you're trying to become a better cook, then listen to podcasts about cooking. or yoga or fitness or whatever it is, painting. Whatever it is, specify your podcast for the area in your life you're trying to improve on and dedicate half of the time you're in your car to podcasting, and I'm telling you, you will be surprised at how much knowledge you've obtained just by listening to it while you drive. So it kills two birds with one stone. You get to your location, you learn something new. So the second area I want to talk about is, so that's the first, so real quick, that's inputs. That's the first area of influence, right? The second area, and we'll probably spend the most time on this, is the associations, right? This is who you allow to influence you, AKA the people you hang around. So this was a really, really interesting part of the book because it sheds a lot of light on a lot of areas I think people don't want to talk about and maybe don't think about, hence subconscious, right? So the second type of influence is associations. You are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? Entrepreneurial and motivational speaker Jim Rohn, who's actually Darren Hardy, the guy that wrote this book, and Tony Robbins' mentor. So think about how successful Tony Robbins is. His mentor was this gentleman, Jim Rohn. If you don't know who Jim Rohn is, he's like the godfather of self-development. But he's the one that originally coined the phrase, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And it's true. According to research by social psychologist Dr. David McKellen of Harvard, your reference group determines as much as 95% of the success or failure in your life. So when I heard that, I was like, goddamn. 95% of the success or failure, so AKA where you are in your life, is directly correlated to the 5 people that you hang around with the most. And so a good question to ask yourself, that obviously begs the following question is, well, who do you spend the most time with? And what people do you admire the most? Are they the same? And if not, why is that? Right? The people that we spend the most time with influence every aspect of life that we experience. This is a fact, without question. What we eat, think about this, what we eat, how often we work out, who we vote for, what we wear, the vocabulary we use in conversations. The vocabulary we use in conversations is something that I've always thought about, I've been pretty self-aware of. When I've hung around certain friends in my life, I've noticed my vocabulary, I'm using a lot of slang, I'm cussing a lot, I'm on a low level frequency, some of the conversations I'm having, right? Especially in college, certain people I used to hang around. I think about the people I hang around now with, people at Sunrun and other financial literate people, and more than just financial literate, people that have a good relationship with God, people that have a good relationship with fitness, areas in their life that they're crushing at, health, which just kind of goes in with fitness, and my vocabulary has changed, right? You are the sum of the 5 people you hang around, especially the things you say, and the things you say trigger your thoughts, right? Your thoughts trigger what you say, but then it's a feedback loop, and the things you say re-trigger the thoughts. So think about that. Think about what you talk about on a day-to-day basis in conversations and the words you use to describe certain things, and understand that that is also dictating what influences you and how you think about things. It's really interesting stuff. And especially how much money you make, right? The success or failure, the way I interpret it, is far and foremost financially. And so become actively aware of this, right? I did this when I read this book. I wrote it down, and it was actually really good for me to see, right? You want to take these, abstract thoughts and put them onto like tangible paper or write them down so you can actually see the things we're talking about. You can apply it, but you can also look at it. There's a thing that happens in your brain when I forgot exactly how it works, but it's like 66%. You're more likely to retain information if you say, write, and read it. Most people just read it or just hear it. If you say, write, and read it, you have a 66 higher percentage to retain that information. It was a cool study. I don't know the article, I'll find it though. But the reason why I say that is become aware of these 5 people by writing down their names, right? Then list, this is something I added to it on my own, then list 3 to 5 traits you're looking for to improve or obtain, and see how many of those traits the people that you currently hang around have. This is huge. See, this is a game changer. That is one good indicator of the people in your life. That is one good indicator of the people in your life are they bringing you up or slowing you down. So for example, if it's, I want to be ripped, or I want to be in really good shape, I want to be, really rich or financially wealthy, I want to have a better relationship with my spouse. Think about take those three and then write down the 5 people: Billy, Bob, Lisa, Tim, and Jerry. And how many of those on there do they have? If they have at least one, okay, then you can work with that. But if they don't have any of the traits that you're looking for, then there's a red flag that maybe it's time to, which I'm going to talk about next. So your associations can be broken down into 3 categories. So within the 3 areas of influence, right, we're on number 2 with associations. There's 3 categories within it that you can break down, which is disassociations, limited associations, and expanded associations. So the first one here, right, which is limited associations, it's people you need to break away from, right? People you wouldn't want your family or loved ones to meet or be around. We've all been there. We all have that one friend that we're like, you know what, dude, sometimes it's someone you've been friends with for a long time and they've kind of grown up to be like just a scumbag, or just they can't take care of themselves. They don't have their shit together. And I always try to imagine, okay, if I'm already starting to feel uneasy about this person in my life, if my mom was here right now or my girlfriend, would I want them to meet them? Would I be proud to have my mom or my girlfriend meet Bob, who wears the same shirt 5 days in a row and works at McDonald's and can't hold a job, right? The reason, or some of the indicators, right, it's pretty obvious, but they make your life harder and don't envision the same abundant life as you, right? Be aware, this is something else. It's not going to be easy. When you're trying to get better in life, think of the rocket. Did you know, this is a cool little fact, that a rocket uses 90% of its fuel on liftoff. Once it gets in the air, momentum takes it the rest of the way, and the other 10% can take it all the way into space. Same idea when you're letting people go that you don't want. It's hardest in the beginning, but then you will get into a flow state after they're out of your life and you're disassociated. But it's not going to be easy, right? It will make them uncomfortable because your growth reminds them of everything that they're not striving for in life. They'll try to bring you down in the process. So just understand this, though. This is important. This isn't hate-based, but it's rather fear-based on their part. There's a lot of people in your life. Grant Cardone actually talks about this. There's haters and there's naysayers, right? Haters you're not already friends with for the most part. Hopefully you don't have friends with anyone that's a hater, because that would be just weird, okay? But there are some naysayers in your life. Sometimes it's your own family. Sometimes it's relatives or childhood friends or people at work. Naysayers, the big difference between a hater and a naysayer is a naysayer cares about you. They love you. However, their version of you is not the version that you're trying to grow into, and it's holding you down. So do know this. Most of the time, these people that you need to disassociate with are people that love you and care about you. However, they're not people that have the best version of you in mind for themselves. So second, we have limited associations. So limited associations are people you spend 3 minutes with, and I'll break these down. There's kind of 3 or 4 different levels of limited associations. So limited associations are people you can spend 3 minutes with, but not 3 hours. There's people you can spend 3 hours with, but not 3 days. And there's people you can spend 3 days with, but not a week with. Think of like a limited association, maybe he's a neighbor. 3 minutes. You say hi to Tom when you walk the dog, nice guy, but you don't really need more than that, right? 3 hours might be your buddies that you used to see back in high school or whatever. Buddies that you go watch football with, right? 3-hour game, you have some beers, you chop it up, you shoot the shit. After that, you're like, cool, get back to my routine. Then there's people you can do 3 days with, right? People you can take vacations with. Hey, maybe it's your roommate or whatever. People you spend a lot of time with, right? But after the trip, you're like, cool, great to catch up with so-and-so, but now I need to get, I need my space again, right? The limited associations, there's different categories, but try and ask yourself this kind of rule of 3. Are these people you can spend 3 minutes with, 3 hours with, or 3 days with, right? They're all limited though. That's why it stops at the 3 days, right? What group are they in? Hopefully your limited associations are somewhere in the minimum 3 hour, but more, 3 day range. People that you enjoy their quality, but there are still a couple things that are differentiating you from them and why you've kept them at a limited distance. Then we have extended associations, right? This is where you should be putting all of your time and energy into. And the way an extended association works is think of mentors. I'm going to talk about some of the best mentors I've had in my life. I'm going to give them a shout out here in a sec. Your spouse or partner, so for me and my girlfriend Sarah, doesn't mean you have to speak and talk with them personally too. This is actually something that when I first read the book and read this chapter, I had to reread it. If they've written books, if they have training videos, audio programs, listen to them over and over again so that you get a better idea of what got them to where they're at, to give you more clarity as to what exactly you admire and wish to emulate with them. So for example, if you look up to Arnold Schwarzenegger, let's say, right? Most people can't have access to that guy. The reality is, maybe one day, right? However, today, if I wanted to call Arnold Schwarzenegger, there's no way I could get a hold of him. However, he has dozens of documentaries, he's written books, interviews, podcasts. I can collect all of that data and spend a lot of time understanding how he became governor, Mr. Olympia 5 times over, famous A-list actor, and understand, oh, okay, he does this, this, and this. That's how he was able to reinvent himself and also create success in 3 completely different avenues: bodybuilding, politically, and then Hollywood. So that's something to think about. Now, in order to figure out, the person you wish to become in life, sit down with yourself and ask questions, right? I think a lot of times, once again, we're in our subconscious programming where we're just going through our thoughts day to day, but we're not really thinking about why we're doing what we're doing or who we're trying to become. Why are we trying to grow? So maybe it helps to even write it down, but ask these questions. He talks about this in the book. I think they're great. Who has the type of meaningful relationships I want? Relationships are everything in life. My current mentor, Grant Shaw, he's just as skilled. He's like a big brother, but also my mentor right now in my life. And he says, by far, relationships are the most meaningful thing to him. Everything else is second, right? And it's crazy because let me just tell you, he's making a lot of money a year, way over. I'm gonna just leave it at this. He's making more than $500,000 a year. I'll leave it at that. And more than $1 million a year, I'll just tell you that. The reality is though, when you start making that much money every year, it's almost like money money is energy. It's just transferred from one thing to the next, but money itself is purposeless. And it's what I really respect and admire about Grant is that he uses it as a tool to help others, but more importantly, he wants to spend all of his energy in relationships, right? Because when you die, you can't take the money with you. If you're a billionaire, you can't take the money with you. And Grant's always taught me, like, hey, invest in relationships with people. Whether it's building a squad, building a team, your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, your kids, your family, people that are on this extended association, spend as much time and energy as you can solidifying those and getting those to grow every day, because they also give you the most reward in return. When you give so much energy and love to somebody and you get that back, it's better than winning any trophy or any sort of accolade that you can think of. And I'm just now learning that in my life at 25. But that's one thing. So, who has the type of meaningful relationships I want? So Grant is one of them. And the way that he keeps, he runs 600 people, manages 600 people plus, has a wife and 2 kids, and it's a lot, right? That has squads and teams and all these different groups in sales with solar, and he's still able to spend time with everybody. I just went to dinner with him last night. That shows you someone that cares about relationships and why he has so many people that would, speak so highly of him and do anything for him. Another one is, how can I spend more time and be around that person more? Obviously, in this case, like I said, it's my boss, but also my mentor. If it's someone like a celebrity, right? We talked about this already, but use books or use audios, or, be resourceful. But if it's someone that you can access, figure out how to spend more time with them. Is it catching them before they get on the elevator every day? Is it figuring out where they go to lunch? Don't be a stalker, don't be weird. But the reality is you want to figure out where they're at, what they're doing, and how can you get in front of them? Maybe it's crushing your sales goals. Maybe it's on a personal level. Maybe it's a girl you want to talk to. It's like, well, just take the opportunity when it presents itself and start to figure out where they're at and what they're looking for, right? There's a great quote that says, if you can help a million people get what they want, you'll never be a day without, right? You'll get what you want, but you always have to figure out, how can I add value to someone else's life? And it might be hard at first, especially if it's a mentor, because they're where you want to go. But you'd be surprised, right? Not everything is on the same playing field, right? Maybe your mentor's struggling with fitness, but they're financially literate. And so you say, hey, I know that you're a millionaire. Can I add some value I know you talk about working out. I can show you this cool workout that I do, blah, blah, blah. Cool. You build a connection. Then when you're working out, you start talking to them about business or finances. You have to think about these things strategically, right? Who in my life always comes off as confident and well put together? So for me, as you guys know, confidence is probably, actually by far, the most important trait to me. Confidence is the most important trait to Nick Federico. Everyone's different. Some people want to be the smartest or the most fearless or the most driven or the most motivated or the most caring or nurturing, and everybody's gifted in some way. But for me, it's confidence, right? And so I think for me, who comes off the most confident, right? I have a couple people in mind I think of right away. My mentor, Ron Pitts, who's a sports broadcaster, works for CBS Sports, a good family friend of mine since I was like 10. Extremely confident because he knows where he's going. He's direct. Same thing with Grant. Same thing with Christian and Luca. These guys know where they're going, girls as well, and they're dialed. And then the confidence comes after. It's like you have to do the discipline first, which is what they don't talk about. People don't talk about that, right? You don't just shout. Alex Hormozy says, you don't just shout affirmations in the mirror, right? It's having an undeniable stack of proof of you are who you say you are, right? If I say I'm a bodybuilder and I weigh 300 pounds, I can't just say I'm confident, right? I can't just say I'm ripped. The reality is, if you go to the gym every day and you eat clean every day, after 2 years, you're gonna look shredded as shit. And people are gonna say, man, you look good. And you're gonna say, I know, right? You can be humble about it, but you'll know that. So confidence is something that I chase, which essentially means discipline. And finally, who is successful? Who is financially successful yet humble? Something that turns me on more than anything else when it comes to looking at people that I want to be like is how humble they are, right? Do they have humility? Because if you have humility, for one, your leadership skills are going to be phenomenal because you can always level with people and show people you're a human being too, and that we're all flawed. But second, the key part here is that they're financially successful, right? They know how to make money, yet they always give back to communities or charities, or in Grant's case, they care about relationships. Same with Ron and Christian too, for that matter. And finally, what embodies the definition of a true leader? These are things that I ask myself, right? Who's a true leader? True leader in my mind is someone that puts the team first, that always gives back, that always reaches out to help someone else out, and it's never burnt out. Their fulfillment comes from helping others. And what do you know? The people that I look up to most have constantly given back and constantly helped others out. Like Ron literally broadcasts NFL games. You know, he's done it for a long time actually. And when I was doing sports broadcasting, I would go to his house and I would sit down and he would take an hour or two out of his day just to sit with me and break down my game footage of how I was doing intros and interviews and how I should talk about the play and the play-by-play versus color commentating, right? Busy guy. Grant's got 600 people. Had dinner with them last night. Busy guy. Same thing with Christian, starting a business. Well, he's had it for a while. Busy guy, but still finding time. And I think the next part that comes with it that's really important is then once you find the answers to who those people are, right? Actively seek to know them and build a better relationship with them, right? Figure out how you got where you want to go, right? Figure out how they got where you want to go, right? What does their morning routine look like? Diet, who do they associate with? What books do they read? What things do they deem most important to focus their time on? We all have the same 24 hours in a day. Jeff Bezos and the homeless guy that lives next to McDonald's have the same 24 hours in a day. The difference is Jeff Bezos is 100 times more productive and focuses his time on things that are much more highly effective and efficient than the homeless guy at McDonald's. So you have to think about that. Who do they go to for help? A true mentor always reaches up to someone else, right? They're always reaching above them. They never have a mindset of they've made it. Grant, in this case, goes to Turnbull. Taylor is the VP of the West Coast for Sunrun. Turnbull goes to Ty. Ty's the VP of the company. Ty, I forgot who they go to, but Grant was telling me, Ty has someone that he reaches out to. So the best leaders in the world still reach out to people above them, right? You're never finished. It's the whole point of the infinite game. You're constantly just elevating, but you should always be bringing, there's a good little quote that says, you should always be reaching up for help and pulling someone else up with you and be competing with someone. Because then that's the definition of a 360-degree leader, right? You're seeking help from someone above you where you want to go. You're competing with someone next to you, which that part, everyone's different. I'm more like focused on yourself, but hey, if that helps you compete with someone next to you. And then you're pulling someone else up below you, right? It creates an endless cycle of growth. Right, and so doing this exercise alone, basically what will happen is, so how do they organize their schedule as well, and then who do they go for help? Doing this exercise alone, it will get your mind thinking and ultimately acting differently with a new perspective, right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create action. You come here for the knowledge and then you go apply it, which brings me to another point. If for whatever reason finding a mentor is really hard and at the current state or where you're at, you just aren't able to find one, I find that hard to believe, but if that's really the case, you can also have an accountability partner. So if getting access to these top level people you wish to add to your extended associations list isn't feasible, that's all right. You can also find an accountability partner, someone who shares similar goals, systems, and visions as you, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you spend all your waking hours with them, but having a daily and weekly check-in works great. So recently for me, I've been doing a 30-day accountability plan with my girlfriend, Sarah. What we do is we created like a group work space, like a spreadsheet kind of on the Notes app on the iPhone. You guys can do this too. You can collaborate with people. And on there, we have like our expenses, our fitness goals and whatnot. And every day we log them. So I log what I eat, what did I spend, did I hit my target for the day? I log it on there, and then she can see it and I can see it. And then we talk about it at the end of the night. Oh, okay, so you did this, right? What'd you do right? What'd you do wrong, right? Because every day you're facing the music. Find someone who's willing to shoot you straight. This is an area that I think we all shy away from, even me included, because I have an ego at times. I'm not perfect, but finding someone who is willing to shoot you straight and give you tough advice, right? Where you are lacking, making mistakes, digging yourself into a bad routine. It will shed light on the areas that you can grow and learn from quickly. For me, who comes to mind is my roommate, Caesar. Love that guy. He annoys the shit out of me sometimes. But the reality is, and I hope you hear this, Caesar, I love you, buddy. The reality is he shoots me straight. Of all my friends that I can think of, he's given me his honest opinion, right? Unsolicited advice. And you need that sometimes, right? And we have a relationship that I almost consider like he's my roommate, so it's almost like a brother, because he gets under my skin, but at the end of the day, that's my boy, and we've been through a lot together. And one of the things that I value that I never really had before meeting him or living with him is that he tells me when I'm fucking up, right? Just like, same with him though, it goes both ways, right? I'm accountable to him as he's accountable to me, right? When I was drinking too much when I first came to San Diego, or not taking the job serious, or whatever it is, right? He'd shoot me straight. And you need that. You need a friend like that. Now the thing is, you have to understand that it's not going to be what you want to hear, but it's going to be what you need to hear. So those people, you should value them just as much as the mentor. I mean, maybe your mentor is that for you, but whoever that is, whether it's an accountability partner or a mentor, know that at the end of the day, they're coming from a good place. Caesar, I know, wants to see me succeed in life. I, for a fact, want to see Caesar succeed in life. And so you have to understand that when you get this constructive criticism, these people want what's best for you. So it's their advice. Take it how you please, but just know that most of the time, it's probably right. If they're people that are in your extended associations list, right? Okay, so this is kind of a big part here. I want to go in on the mentors. So mentors build momentum, right? In every job I've ever had, I've always had a mentor who was where I wanted to go. This is something that I pride myself on, is I always made it a priority to get on a family or an older brother or father figure type relationship with that mentor. Reason why it's so important is when you have that level of a family dynamic in a relationship with a mentor, they're going to invest so much more into your success and help you want to grow that much more to achieve your goals. Key point here, ding, 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 with some dots. As long as you continue to actively show them that what they're teaching you is constantly being applied, right? One of my great mentors, as I've spoke about earlier, Christian DeLuca, who first taught me how to sell in door-to-door, said, knowledge without application is ignorance. It's a great quote. I don't know where he got it. Maybe he made it up, but it's a great quote. It's not until we apply what we learn that knowledge is actually valuable, right? Grant Shaw, my current mentor, is always emphasizing the importance of having systems in place. Because without goals and visions, having systems in place, because without it, your goals and visions are nothing more than a pipe dream, right? I've been blessed with many phenomenal mentors in my life, most of who I still talk to this day, but I cannot overstate the importance and how important it is to find one that is willing to positively impact your growth and that you treat the relationship the same as you would with the same amount of energy and respect as you would with a partner or family member. Mentors, right? Usually people that you look up to are busier than you are, right? And I'm assuming everyone that listens to this podcast is busy. In fact, everybody's busy is the reality. It's just depending on what you spend your time with is what makes you efficient or not. One of the biggest things that I've learned in my life is if a mentor is going to give their time to you, right? They're doing you a bigger favor than you're doing them. That's the reality, okay? Let's call a spade a spade. You need to show them that what they're teaching you, you're learning from. So if it's a sales tactic, you need to show them that you're implementing and you're at least trying. The amount of people that I see get advice or take advice from someone that's very high level and then they don't do anything with it is like an ultimate slap in the face or disrespect to the mentor, which they're very quickly going to stop spending their time on you. But everybody that's successful always wants to help out that guy or girl that is trying and giving it their all and asking questions, right? And it reminds me of what David Goggins said, which is he says, you'll never see a hater doing better than you, right? It's also true that successful people love to help other new prospects level up because it does give them a deep sense of pride and helpfulness that comes from giving back to others, right? People that are doing better than you for the most part, right? They are willing to help you if you're willing to help yourself and you're showing them, hey, Grant, you showed me how to close this deal and I did it and I applied it and it worked. They love that because they feel like, oh my God, Nick's getting it. Now let me show Nick this thing and then have him apply that and he'll be able to run with that as well. And so the final area that we'll wrap up with here is on environment. So the third area of influence is environment, which is your surroundings. So it's the third and final type of influence. There's a great saying by a famous sports psychologist, Bill Beswick. He says, your genes deal the hand and your environment plays the cards. Meaning, nature and nurture interact to influence who you are, right? So when I first heard that quote, I literally stopped. I was listening to a podcast and I wrote it down because I was like, wow, that's really good. And it resonates a lot. So the genes deal your hand, the environment plays the card, right? In other words, it's not your fault that you're born a certain way, but the environment that you grow up in is definitely going to impact the way that you do grow up. If you grow up short or too tall or poverty stricken or whatever it is, you grew up without a mom, you grew up without a dad or in foster care, right? It's not your fault. The genes that you're dealt with, I mean, those are a little bit like, not necessarily genes, but you get the point. But the environment that you grew up in is going to play the cards. And so you have to remember that. You can't have the victim mentality. Everybody gets the hands they're dealt, but you have to make the most of them. And that's why it's important to, once again, reach on people that are doing better than you and surround yourself with like-minded or more successful individuals. Your perspective shapes your reality. Change your environment will change your perspective, right? In life, you will get what you accept and what you're worthy of. Something they talk about in this book a lot is what you allow to tolerate, right? And so put another way, your life is a combination of what you are currently allowing yourself to tolerate. What you tolerate will stay the same. What you don't tolerate or what is not tolerated will change. Nothing changes if nothing changes. Sorry, there's flies in here. It's kind of annoying. If you tolerate being fat, right, you'll continue to be out of shape. If you tolerate being broke, you will continue to be broke. If you tolerate mediocrity, you'll continue to be average until something changes. I think, and what I've seen and experienced, is that people tolerate for far too long before coming to a realization that they need to make a change or move on. For me, I think about, take for example, when I was at Chico, I tolerated drinking 4 or 5 days a week and tolerated just barely getting by with no direction and no long-term life goals or visions or systems for years before I finally got into solar and my whole mentality changed, which I'm going to talk about in a second. The reality is, the faster you take responsibility, right, and understand that no one's coming to save you, right, the faster you can take action and change your environment. So by setting clear and consistent routines, you will build a solid foundation of discipline that will inevitably propel you forward, especially when momentum shows up, right? Some examples of this are, waking up and going to bed at the same time daily. For me, I've been trying to make it a goal, 7 a.m. every day. Maybe for you it's 8, maybe it's 6, it doesn't matter, but stick to it, right? And the hard part, this is where I'm actually myself trying to get better at, is going to bed at the same time every day. Because then what happens is you wake up at the same time, you go to bed at the same time, your circadian rhythm gets dialed, and you'll notice that you'll get on a routine cycle where your consistent and clear routines start to build that solid foundation for discipline. Morning workout. I think it's great to work out in the morning if you work out. Also, I understand that not everyone has a gym membership or weights at the house, but everybody can go walk for 30 minutes or go for a jog. Whatever it is, but doing a morning workout always gives me energy and motivation, I should say, more pride than anything as I get into my day. Imagine you already work out and you show up to the office or you show up to your job and you already kicked ass on your workout, you're feeling good, you got those adrenals popped, adrenals going, you have the dopamine, right? Healthy dopamine released from your brain. So consistent diet, right? Eating the same thing. For me, Monday through Friday, Saturday morning, I eat clean, and then Saturday night, Sunday, I'll usually eat a little bit of junk food. And then having your day planned out the night before. I've been doing this since I was 18 for the most part, I would say with like 90% accuracy. And you'd be surprised how much more efficient you'll be just by writing out what you have to do in the morning versus floating through life, which we'll cover that in a different podcast. Your environment, just so we're clear, isn't just referring to your physical, but it can be your mental environment as well. As we talked about before, right? Social media, things that are just directly correlating to changing your thought process, right? Things you're thinking about. Why are you thinking about those things? Well, who are you surrounding yourself with? And so cleaning out or rearranging your current clutter of your environment will give you a new sound perspective. And so as I kind of alluded to a couple minutes ago, Chico's college environment, right? I went from partying with frat bros and the athletes and whatnot, and I was still in Chico. And then about 1.5 years, 2 years down the road, I got involved in solar and started hanging around people that were making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And it really started to change my perspective on a lot of things. I started thinking about money differently, and sales and betterment and psychology. All of this just because I surrounded myself with a different group of people. I was still in the same town, but I was around a different group of people. Then I got some of my friends involved. And then they started changing how their thoughts were, right? Some of them worked at the restaurant with me, and then I was like, hey, you should check this out. And they did, and now they're crushing it in life too. Shout out John and Jack. John Espinosa, Jack Fisher. Those are my boys back home in Chico. And so the reason why I bring that up is I get it. Okay, most people can't just pack up their shit and move to a different city or state, especially if you're in maybe like a poverty area, like you're in the hood or you're in the ghetto. I get that, but you can change the people that you hang around, right? You are the 5 people you hang around, you spend the most time with. Think about that, right? They dictate 95% of your success or failure. So find a new group of friends, whether it's joining a new club or a group. The message is basically this: if you don't like where you're at currently, change your environment by actively seeking to get around new groups of people. That's basically the cut and dry version of all of this. And so to wrap up here, this is going to wrap up another episode of the Betterment Podcast, The Pursuit of Infinite Growth. Thank you to all the listeners for your support and constant engagement with the show. It means so much to us. Remember, new episodes drop every single Monday. So you can follow us on Instagram at _Betterment Podcast, Spotify and YouTube at Betterment Podcast. Go have a phenomenal week, and we will see you next week. Just a final thought here, guys. Your influence and how we're influenced is everything, right? We don't think about it as often as maybe we could or should, but the reality is, after breaking down, right, a little bit of what I learned in this book from the compound effect, from a very high successful individual and Darren Hardy, we're all influenced in different areas of our life. Just trying to fix even one or two things can drastically compound where you're headed in life. That's the whole moral of the book. So I hope this was in some way influential. You guys got something out of it. If you have questions, make sure to follow us on Instagram, shoot me a DM. I'm always happy to help. And at the end of the day, I'm still learning myself too. So a lot of this stuff that we talk about, I'm still learning to implement in my own life. But at the end of the day, I really want to say I appreciate everybody's support and love to this podcast. I am so confident of where this thing is going, and I have a lot of ideas that are going to really explode in the next couple months. So send this to a family member or a friend or someone that you think maybe can use some betterment in their life. And hey, this is Monday, so go ahead and crush your week, guys. Thank you.